sex education that can save your relationship. We're taught how to chase love, how to impress, how to attract, but almost no one teaches us how to sustain intimacy once the excitement fades. Most relationships don't end because love disappears. They end because understanding does. Desire changes, bodies change, emotional needs evolve. And when couples don't have the language or awareness to navigate those shifts, frustration quietly replaces connection. Real sex education isn't about positions or performance. It's about communication, safety, curiosity, and emotional honesty. It's about understanding how desire actually works, why mismatched libidos happen, and how unresolved emotions show up in the bedroom. When couples lack this education, sex becomes a battlefield of expectations, rejection, and silence. When they have it, sex becomes a bridge back to trust, playfulness, and intimacy. This conversation isn't about blaming men or women. It's about revealing the invisible forces shaping attraction, arousal, and attachment. It's about learning how to talk about sex without shame, how to listen without defensiveness, and how to rebuild desire without forcing it. Because the truth is simple but powerful. When couples understand sex better, they fight less, feel safer, and love deeper. If your relationship feels distant, confusing, or emotionally flat, this isn't a sign that it's broken. It's a sign that no one ever taught you what you needed to know. And that's exactly what this talk is here to change. 5 key points of the speech. 1. Why lack of sex education destroys emotional connection. Most couples don't argue about sex. They argue because of sex. When people don't understand desire cycles, arousal differences, or emotional triggers, rejection feels personal, and intimacy feels unsafe. Education turns confusion into clarity and resentment into empathy. 2. Desire is emotional before it is physical. Attraction doesn't start in the body, it starts in the nervous system. Feeling seen, safe, respected, and emotionally connected directly impacts sexual desire. When emotional intimacy drops, physical intimacy almost always follows. 3. Communication is the real foreplay. Great sex isn't created by technique, it's created by conversation. Couples who can talk openly about boundaries, fantasies, fears, and needs build trust, and trust is what allows desire to expand rather than shut down. 4. Mismatched libidos are normal. Silence is the problem. Different desire levels don't mean incompatibility, they mean different rhythms. Without education, couples blame each other. With understanding, they learn how to negotiate intimacy without pressure, guilt, or avoidance. 5. Healthy sex keeps relationships alive long term. Sex isn't just pleasure, it's bonding, reassurance, play, and emotional regulation. When intimacy is nurtured consciously, relationships stay resilient, affectionate, and emotionally secure even through stress and change. 1. Why lack of sex education destroys emotional connection. Most relationships don't fall apart because 2 people stop loving each other. They fall apart because 2 people stop understanding each other, especially around sex. When sex education is missing, couples are left to guess, assume, and personalize experiences that were never meant to be personal. One partner feels rejected, the other feels pressured, and neither has the language to explain what's actually happening beneath the surface. Without proper sex education, many people grow up believing that desire should be automatic and constant. When it isn't, they assume something is wrong with them or their partner. This misunderstanding quietly poisons emotional connection. A low desire partner may feel broken or guilty, while a high desire partner may feel unwanted or unattractive. Over time, these unspoken emotions turn into resentment, withdrawal, or passive aggression, none of which feels safe or loving. Another major issue is that people are rarely taught that desire fluctuates. Stress, emotional safety, body image, hormones, unresolved conflict, and mental health all influence sexual interest. When couples don't understand this, they interpret changes in sex as changes in love. A tired nervous system gets misread as a lack of attraction. Emotional distance gets confused with loss of desire. The result is emotional misalignment, where both partners feel unseen and misunderstood. Lack of education also turns sex into a performance instead of a shared experience, many people feel pressure to be good at sex rather than be present in it. This creates anxiety, self-consciousness, and avoidance. When someone feels judged by their partner or by their own expectations, they emotionally disconnect to protect themselves. Over time, sex stops being a place of closeness and becomes a source of tension. Perhaps the most damaging effect is silence. Without education, people don't know how to talk about sex without shame, defensiveness, or fear of hurting their partner, so they don't talk at all. They hope the problem will fix itself. But silence doesn't heal intimacy. It widens the gap. Emotional connection thrives on curiosity and openness. And when sex becomes a forbidden topic, emotional intimacy collapses alongside physical intimacy. Sex education doesn't just teach people about bodies. It teaches them about empathy. It helps partners understand that rejection isn't always personal, that desire is complex, and that intimacy requires emotional safety. When couples learn this, they stop blaming and start listening. They stop reacting and start understanding. Ultimately, lack of sex education destroys emotional connection because it replaces clarity with confusion and curiosity with fear. But when couples learn how desire truly works, emotional closeness returns, not because they're having more sex, but because they finally feel understood again. 2. Desire is emotional before it is physical. One of the biggest myths people carry into relationships is the idea that desire begins in the body. In reality, desire begins in the nervous system. And the nervous system responds first to emotion, not touch. When people feel emotionally safe, seen, and valued, the body naturally opens to intimacy. When they feel stressed, criticized, ignored, or misunderstood, desire quietly shuts down, no matter how attractive their partner may be. Emotional connection acts like a bridge between two bodies. Without it, physical intimacy feels mechanical or forced. Many people struggle with desire not because they don't love their partner, but because their emotional world feels disconnected. Unresolved arguments, lack of appreciation, emotional neglect, or constant tension signal the brain that it isn't safe to relax. And desire requires relaxation. A guarded nervous system cannot access pleasure. This is why foreplay doesn't start in the bedroom. It starts in everyday interactions. Feeling listened to, respected, and emotionally prioritized throughout the day creates the conditions for desire later on. When affection only appears as a prelude to sex, it feels transactional rather than intimate. Emotional intimacy, on the other hand, builds trust, and trust allows desire to emerge naturally instead of being demanded. Emotions also shape how desire is experienced differently for different people. Some feel desire first, and then emotional closeness follows. Others need emotional closeness before. Redesire can appear at all. Neither is wrong, but when couples don't understand this difference, they misinterpret each other's needs. One partner may feel rejected while the other feels pressured. Education helps couples recognize these patterns without blame. Stress plays a powerful role here as well. Chronic stress keeps the nervous system in survival mode. In that state, the brain prioritizes safety over pleasure. This is why people often lose sexual interest during emotionally difficult periods, even in loving relationships. Without understanding this, partners may assume attraction has faded, when in reality, the body is simply overwhelmed. Emotional validation is another crucial element. Feeling judged or criticized, especially around sex, creates shame, and shame is one of the fastest ways to shut down desire. When people feel accepted as they are, curiosity and openness return. Desire grows in environments where vulnerability is met with care rather than correction. Understanding that desire is emotional before physical changes how couples approach intimacy. Instead of asking, "Why don't you want sex?" they begin asking, "How are you feeling?" Instead of pushing for closeness, they create safety for it. This shift alone can transform a relationship. When emotional needs are acknowledged and met, the body follows naturally. Desire doesn't need to be forced, chased, or negotiated. It needs to be felt. And feeling starts with emotional connection, not physical effort. 3. C. Communication is the real foreplay. Most people think foreplay begins with touch, but in reality, foreplay begins with conversation. The way partners talk to each other, especially about sex, directly shapes how safe, desired, and connected they feel. When communication is open, curious, and respectful, intimacy flows naturally. When it's defensive, silent, or shame-filled, desire slowly disappears. Many couples struggle sexually not because they lack attraction, but because they lack language. They don't know how to express what they want, what they fear, or what feels uncomfortable without worrying about rejection or conflict. So instead of speaking honestly, they avoid the conversation altogether. This silence creates distance, and distance kills intimacy. Healthy sexual communication isn't about demanding change. It's about sharing experience. Saying, I feel disconnected when we don't talk opens a door. Saying, you never want sex slams it shut. The difference lies in emotional safety. When partners feel safe to speak without being blamed, corrected, or mocked, they become more open, not just emotionally, but physically as well. Communication also helps normalize differences. No two people desire sex in exactly the same way or at the same frequency. Without discussion, these differences feel personal and painful. With communication, they become something to navigate together rather than something to fight over. Talking about sex reduces misunderstanding and replaces assumption. S with clarity. Another important aspect of communication is consent and boundaries. Desire grows when people feel they have a choice. When intimacy feels expected or obligatory, it triggers resistance. Clear, compassionate communication allows partners to say yes freely and no safely. This mutual respect strengthens trust, and trust is one of the strongest aphrodisiacs there is. Emotional tone matters just as much as words. Eye contact, patience, and genuine curiosity communicate desire long before physical touch does. Feeling heard and emotionally held can be more arousing than any technique. This is why couples who talk openly about sex often report better intimacy, even if their physical frequency doesn't change dramatically. Communication also allows desire to evolve. What felt exciting early in a relationship may change over time. Bodies change. Life stress changes. Needs change. When couples can talk about these shifts without fear, intimacy adapts instead of fading. In the end, communication is the real foreplay because it creates anticipation, safety, and connection. It tells your partner, I see you, I respect you, and I want to understand you. And when those messages are felt deeply, desire doesn't need to be forced. It naturally follows. 4. Mismatched libidos are normal. Silence is the problem. One of the most misunderstood issues in relationships is mismatched libido. Many couples assume that wanting sex at different levels means they are incompatible or that something is fundamentally wrong with their relationship. In reality, mismatched desire is not the exception. It is the norm. What damages relationships isn't the difference in desire, but the lack of understanding and communication around it. Libido is influenced by countless factors: stress, hormones, emotional connection, health, past experiences, mental load, and even cultural conditioning. These factors fluctuate over time, which means desire naturally rises and falls. Expecting two people to remain perfectly aligned sexually across years or decades is unrealistic. When couples don't understand this, they personalize the difference. One partner feels rejected, while the other feels pressured or inadequate. Silence around mismatched libido creates a breeding ground for resentment. The higher desire partner may feel constantly unwanted or undesired, interpreting not now as not you. The lower desire partner may feel overwhelmed, guilty, or broken, fearing that they are failing their partner. Without open conversation, both partners suffer quietly, often blaming themselves or each other rather than the misunderstanding itself. Another problem arises when sex becomes a duty rather than a choice. When someone engages in intimacy out of obligation, desire erodes even further. Forced or guilt-driven sex damages trust and emotional safety. Over time, the body begins to associate intimacy with pressure instead of pleasure, making the gap even wider. Education helps couples recognize that consent, enthusiasm, and emotional readiness matter more than frequency. Healthy sex education reframes libido differences as something to collaborate on rather than fight against. It teaches couples to explore questions like, what increases desire for you? What decreases it? How do stress, affection, and emotional closeness affect your interest in sex? These conversations transform libido from a personal flaw into a shared dynamic. Compromise doesn't mean one person constantly sacrifices their comfort. It means finding creative, respectful ways to maintain closeness without coercion. This might include non-sexual affection, emotional intimacy, or redefining what intimacy looks like during different life phases. When partners feel emotionally connected, desire often follows naturally, without pressure. Understanding that mismatched libido is normal allows couples to replace shame with empathy. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with you?" they begin asking, "How can we stay connected while honoring both of our needs?" This shift alone can save relationships. Ultimately, silence is far more damaging than difference. When couples talk openly, listen with judgment, and treat desire as fluid rather than fixed, mismatched libidos stop being a threat and become an opportunity for deeper understanding and intimacy. 5. Healthy sex keeps relationships alive long term. Sex in a long-term relationship is often misunderstood as optional or secondary, especially once emotional bonds are established. In reality, healthy sex plays a vital role in keeping relationships emotionally alive. It isn't just about physical pleasure, it's about connection, reassurance, playfulness, and emotional regulation. When intimacy is nurtured intentionally, it becomes a stabilizing force that helps couples weather stress, conflict, and change. Healthy sex reinforces bonding. Physical intimacy releases hormones that promote trust, closeness, and emotional security. These experiences remind partners that they are chosen, desired, and valued, not just as companions, but as intimate partners. Without this reinforcement, relationships can slowly shift into roommate dynamics where affection exists, but passion fades and emotional distance grows quietly. Sex also acts as a form of emotional communication. Often, what can't be said with words is expressed through touch, closeness, and vulnerability. Intimacy allows couples to reconnect after conflict, offering reassurance when words feel insufficient. When sex disappears entirely, couples lose a powerful channel for emotional repair, making misunderstandings harder to resolve. Another important aspect is play. Sex brings novelty, curiosity, and lightness into a relationship. Long-term partnerships can become routine-heavy due to responsibilities and stress. Intimacy offers a space where partners can step out of their roles and reconnect as lovers rather than problem solvers. This sense of play helps protect relationships from emotional stagnation. However, healthy sex is not about frequency or performance. It's about mutual desire, safety, and authenticity. Sex that is pressured, transactional, or disconnected does not strengthen a relationship, it weakens it. Healthy sex requires emotional attunement, consent, and presence. When both partners feel respected and free to express themselves, intimacy becomes nourishing rather than draining. Life transitions such as parenthood, career stress, aging, or health changes can alter sexual dynamics. Couples who understand this don't panic when intimacy shifts. Instead, they adapt. They redefine closeness, prioritize connection in new ways, and remain emotionally curious about each other. This flexibility is what allows relationships to thrive over time rather than fracture under change. Ultimately, healthy sex keeps relationships alive because it keeps them felt. It maintains emotional closeness, reinforces attraction, and reminds partners that they are more than just functional teammates. They are intimate companions. When couples invest in understanding and nurturing their sexual connection, they aren't just improving their sex life, are protecting the emotional heart of their relationship. Conclusion, paragraph 1. Sex education that can truly save a relationship is not about learning techniques or chasing perfection. It is about learning understanding. When couples understand how desire works, why it changes, and how deeply it is connected to emotional safety, they stop blaming each other and start supporting each other. This awareness alone can turn confusion into clarity and distance into closeness. Relationships don't fall apart because intimacy disappears. Intimacy disappears when understanding does. Paragraph 2. Throughout this conversation, one truth becomes clear. Desire cannot survive pressure, shame, or silence. It needs safety, communication, and empathy. When couples learn to talk openly about sex without fear or judgment, intimacy stops being a problem to fix and becomes a space to explore together. Emotional honesty creates trust, and trust creates the conditions where desire can naturally return. Paragraph 3. Mismatched libidos, emotional disconnection, and fading passion are not signs of failure. They are signs of unmet needs and missing education. When couples replace assumptions with curiosity, they move from conflict to collaboration. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with us?" they begin asking, "What do we need to understand better?" This shift protects relationships from resentment and keeps emotional bonds strong over time. Paragraph 4. Healthy sex is not a luxury in long-term relations. HIPS is a form of emotional maintenance. It keeps partners feeling chosen, connected, and alive together. When intimacy is nurtured with care and awareness, relationships remain resilient through stress, change, and growth. Love deepens when couples feel safe enough to be vulnerable, honest, and emotionally present with each other. Paragraph 5. In the end, real sex education teaches us that intimacy is not something you perform, it is something you build. It is built through empathy, communication, and a willingness to understand both yourself and your partner. When couples learn these skills, relationships don't just survive, they evolve, deepen, and thrive. Thank you and goodbye note. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch and reflect on this conversation. I hope it gave you clarity, insight, and a new way to think about intimacy and connection. Remember, growth begins with awareness, and understanding is the foundation of every healthy relationship. Take care of yourself, take care of your relationships, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.